Thanks for joining us from wherever you are in the world. My name is Snyder. I'm a principal security engineer at Microsoft. Um, this panel is, as you can see, a diverse panel of industry leaders. We have some prepared questions, but mostly we want to be able to take questions from the audience. Because this platform is new to us, we're actually still using Slido. That's slido.com. And that number, once you go to slido.com, it just asks you for the poll number, is 362-8378. And now I'm going to turn over to the panel to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Amanda Gray. I am a staff software engineer at BP, but actually I'm a security and privacy engineer. I've been secretly doing that role for many, many different titles. It honestly doesn't matter. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that a little bit in this panel. A little bit on my background, I've been in the industry since about 1993, software, dev, security, and privacy. Passing on to the next, thank you.
Hey y'all, I'm Jimenez. I've been working, started my career in the intelligence community, in the Army actually, and then midway through changed my career path into cybersecurity. So I've been doing that since 2011, and I'm currently the director for data and system security at Dropbox. And then I'll hand it over to Tracie.
You're on mute, Tracie.
Every time, never fails. Hi, my name is Tracie. Jess and I actually share a pretty similar background. I came out of the Air Force and then worked for the Army doing counterintelligence. I've done a bunch of different stuff, Microsoft Incident Response, Google, Android Security, and now I am the Director of Quality Excellence for the Cyber Threat Management team over at PayPal. And over to Trupti.
Hi, everyone. I'm feeling extremely privileged to be part of this panel, and thank you all for joining us today. I started my career journey as a mobile game developer, but my passion was always security and privacy. Cryptography used to be my first love, and it is still. As part of my 18 years of cybersecurity career, I played various roles. I was a penetration tester at one point, then became a cryptography engineer, started doing privacy by design, played some security engineering leadership roles. And just recently, last month, I left my job at Datadog and about to start my own company called TrueNil. It is a company for life science data security. So that's about me. Over to you, Lee.
Awesome. As we wait for questions to come in, and now I actually think I do understand the chat as well. So if you're more comfortable using this chat, feel free to use it. If you'd rather use Slido, which is anonymous, feel free to use that as well. To get us started, it's an interesting time in cybersecurity, right? We've seen a lot of rifts, and it's been sort of a volatile period. When we think about our careers in this volatile period, what does success look like right now for you and your role? Okay, one of you does have to take it.
I'll take it because I know we talked about riffs, and this is timely. For me, I was caught up in the most recent riffs at Amazon. For me personally, it was probably not as maybe shocking as it was for some other folks. I think I went into that role and that culture expecting to be riffed or pipped at some point and planned accordingly. But I think for me, it's been eye-opening to watch how companies did the riffs and how the human process kind of broke down. And my personal prediction, because I know I've sat on so many hiring committees, especially in cybersecurity, saying we can't find talent. And now we have this almost huge cohort of people that I think feel a lot of bitterness towards the large companies that did mass layoffs and aren't looking to go back anytime soon. So when the economy shifts, and it will shift again, right? It's always cyclical. They're going to be in this double bind of recruiting and lack of interest. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how that shapes the cybersecurity recruitment landscape.
Amanda, do you want to go?
Sure. So, kind of not talking so much about the career side of it, perhaps, but more success in companies, but tying in. So, a lot of people have been leaving big tech, pushed out or just done with it, and moving over to the other parts of the industry who do software but don't have the maturity level that big tech has. And so, a bunch of us are part of what's called a digital transformation, which when I heard digital transformation, I had no idea what they meant. What they actually just meant was doing software right, the way that we've done. And so all of those companies, including their security organizations, are trying to adapt to what to them is a new way of building products, which may not be new to us. And so I've been part of a vanguard of sorts, who are coming in and dealing with a lot of cultural changes. And so navigating that sort of thing, what is success when you're trying to help an organization mature in a way that they're not used to? It takes two things. One, you have to understand where they are coming from and how you can use their ways of getting things done in order to move forward, as well as being sure to bring in the good parts of these big companies and trying to drop some of the bad parts. So that's general. That applies to everything outside of cybersecurity, but it also includes cybersecurity as well. And we can talk in more detail about that if it comes up. Go on, Jess.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add, like, getting more granular to your question, Lee. Success in my role in the context of rifts that are happening and reduced resourcing, both in terms of headcount and software dollars, really means being very crisp in terms of prioritizing the work, understanding what risks we're facing, and then clearly defining what's below the line for our team, so that we're still creating a workplace and that's human, right? That we're not asking people to do more with less, but also, informing the rest of the business that with the resources available, this is what we're able to do for you, based on the risks that we're seeing.
Okay, awesome. We're starting to get a lot of questions, so I'm going to quickly pivot to the questions from the audience, both at Slido and here. I will warn the audience that I I take liberties with your questions. I may modify them slightly, but we'll get to the heart of what you're asking. Um, I guess this one, I think Trupti, you might be a really good person to answer it. Is what are some of the signs that it's time to move on or look for a new role?
So I would like to give a twofold answer to this question. First one is, it's very important to understand what are your own personal goals, what are your learning goals, what are your financial goals, or what are your promotion related goals or other goals. So if your goals are meeting over the time, let's say 1 year, 2 year, 3 year time frame, you're seeing yourself, continuously being challenged in the role, you're learning a lot, you are getting rewarded by the company and management, great, stay in the company. If this is not happening, then it's time to move on. So this is about your intrinsic goals. Second one, if you are experiencing instability at leadership level that is causing you unsafe environment, or if your team members are being toxic and you're not getting enough support from the leadership or management, or just companies going in a totally different direction than when you joined and what they promise you, none of this is happening, then it's time to move on rather than just keep suffering, because there are a lot of great organizations out there with great mission, and you can be part of that rocket ship rather than just staying here and suffering for a long time.
Go for it, Jess.
Yeah, I have a really simple kind of litmus test that I use, when I call it the Sunday night test, and I'm sure I didn't come up with that myself, right? I think I read it in a Gallup book or something. But it's really like, if consistently over time on Sunday night you're just dreading going to work Monday morning, then it's probably time to look for a new role, right? Because then you're not going to be able to be authentic in your role, you're not going to be able to represent the company's position, and you're not going to bring your whole self, to your team and to accomplishing your mission. So that's really my test, is if it's Sunday night, I don't want to go to work Monday morning, consistently, right? Then that's time for me to look for something else.
Yeah, I
I
had a
have
boss who used to call it like if you don't like your job 4 Mondays in a row, like she had hers was a Monday test instead of a Sunday test, but it was like 4 Mondays in a row, time to move on. Anyways, go ahead, Tracie.
I have a similar test, but I think it's less time based. So they call, and I obviously did not come up with this. It's called the puppy and the beer test, and the idea is that everyone in your life falls into one of three categories. Someone you would trust to watch your puppy, so they're responsible, they do their job, you can trust them with anything. And then the beer test is, or beverage test, is somebody you would want to go hang out with on your free time. And some people fall into only one of those categories, right? Like some people are puppy people, and that's great. We need puppy people. Some people are beer people, and that's also great. We need beer people. But the best people are beer and puppy people. And that's the people you would both trust to watch your puppy and you want to hang out with outside of like forced work time. And if I can find 2 or 3 beer and puppy people in my team, that tells me it's a really great team that I want to stay with. Because for me, I've been doing this for so long, and every part of cybersecurity kind of sucks in its own special and unique way. And so it becomes about who you're in the fight with for me versus like what you're doing day to day.
Awesome. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Amanda.
And for me, when it's getting hard to really figure that stuff out, I will actually just fall back on keeping a little emotion log. So I've got my calendar for the meetings and the things I'm doing through the day. And on the hour, I just say smiley, sad, and neutral. And that helps me suss out if there's actually one person who's causing me a lot of pain and making me bad, in which case I can rearrange my job to avoid that problem. Or if it's more systemic and it really is, I need to leave this field or this particular company completely. So that's my test.
I kind of love that. I feel like that'd be a great thing to adopt. So from the audience, and I think this was an interesting question for us because a lot of us actually have shifted gears during our career, especially when we're focused on different niches. Amanda, I know that like you started in security and then you're now in privacy engineering. So the question is like, how do you find your niche in this industry, and how do you become an expert? And if there's any sort of like nuance you can provide about when you're getting started in a role, that would be great.
Sorry, I'm going to hop in because I actually left tech after 5 full years at Microsoft and went to law school instead. So that's a pretty big pivot. And while I was in the middle of that, I realized, complicated story there, but I realized that what I actually wanted to do was not law school. I actually wanted to do science. So I switched over and I did physics and oceanography, and I had a lot of fun. But while I was working on that, a really weird little thing happened, which was all of my coworkers and I needed to start using encrypted email, and nobody knew how to do it except for me because it's what I had been doing before at Microsoft. So I started helping people out with that. And as part of that job, I also started to do more stuff with applied cryptography. And next thing I knew, I was coming back into the field I had left just because I found that I had an inherent interest. It just kept coming back that that's really what I wanted to do too. So I took this big detour, and I found that all of the experiences I got on that big detour actually help out a lot with my work now, whether it's dealing with incident response, because working at sea in very tight conditions, you learn how to prioritize things based on risk. And guess what? You're going to be doing that in incident response as well as dealing with stress. Like your chief scientist is screaming at you because they think you've ruined the experiment. And you're like, I've got it. Trust me on this. We're doing this stuff. That actually just applies directly to what you're going to be doing later when you're dealing with big issues on fire. So I think part of the niche is like you need to be listening to yourself, but also trust it's okay to explore. Like, don't feel like you need to figure out what your niche is right now. It will come to you. You have time to do this. That's it for me.
Yeah, go ahead, Trupti.
So, in order to find what's the next niche thing you want to focus on or how to find the niche, I would say on a very fine day, sit down in a corner with no interruption and close your eyes and really think through what really excites you, because things that excites you are not random in nature. Not everything excites everybody. Once you figure out the things that excites you, do you have like the real intellectually honest curiosity in that subject? If that's the thing, that's your answer to start, developing niche. Go find a job, go get, training courses as Amanda suggested. She felt compelled towards law studies and then ocean science and whatnot, so she took some training and then tried to find a job in it to go further deeper. And it is quite possible that for next 2 3 years you enjoy applied cryptography, and then it's privacy engineering, and then maybe life science security. You never know. But in tuning with your real self and listening to your inner voice, that will direct you. And then it's just matter of putting efforts, meeting the right people, grabbing some mentors, going to conferences like this to develop that niche.
Okay, awesome. This one's actually about leveling up your career, and since that is actually what we titled this, I'm going to choose that question. As you level up your career, how do you let go of the doing or the staying in the weeds and transition more to either a management role or a strategy role?
And that's something that I struggle with. I used to, until probably about 6 months ago, block off pretend to be an engineer time on my calendar. And so that was my way of like at least time boxing the time that I would get in the weeds and like log dive. But I think I realized that I was becoming that director that would like find something and then squirrel away an engineer to like go look at this thing that I found. And I realized that that was not efficient or effective for my team. And like what my team actually needed me to be doing was, building those relationships outward, promoting the team, and unblocking them so they could get their job done. And so really for me, it was just a reckoning of, is this being helpful for my team and for accomplishing my mission, or is this harmful, right? And so I still enjoy pretending to be an engineer. I just do it on my own time. I picked up teaching classes at UTSA, and I use that as my time to like get my hands dirty tech wise, so that I'm not being that director that everybody's like, oh God, Jess is pinging me again. What is it going to be this time?
Yeah, go for it, Tracie.
I think the interesting part for me was there's this book that I read a million years ago. I think the title is like what got you here won't get you there. And it was focused more on general career advice, but I think it's really interesting when we think of cybersecurity as well, because we were valued as ICs for our technical competence, for our ability to write lines of code and understand architecture and things like that. And the truth is that those skills will only get you so far. And especially when you look across tech, like the high level IC roles are concentrated in very few companies. And so learning to value other skills equally, like I remember I would read like management books or something, or somebody would talk and I'd be like, oh, gross. Like, that's not interesting. I don't want to learn that, like, because I'd never been valued for that before. It didn't seem like a real skill. And especially when we're talking to a diverse audience, those soft skills they tend to be looked down on as, feminine skills or skills that are not, I can't tell you how many times I've had we just had this in a review meeting. Well, she's really good at her job. She's just not technical. Okay. Define what that means to you. Tell me where she could improve in the next 6 months to be more technical. Oh gosh, I don't know. Makes my eyeballs bleed, because it's like this double whammy, especially for women in tech, that, we're penalized for these soft skills that are actually the secret to unlocking like higher levels of the game. So I think it's a little bit about mind shift and just recognizing that those things that we learn that are not tech skills are actually useful and valuable things, and not everybody can do them. Not everybody has soft skills. Not everybody has EQ. Even though it's kind of assumed, it's actually, I think, one of the least represented skills in tech that I've seen.
I love that perspective that leadership skill is a craft that needs to be honed just as much as your tech skill is a craft that needs to be honed.
I also wanted to double up on Tracie's point about, we spend, as women in cybersecurity or women in software, we spend a lot of our time proving over and over again that we're technical enough. And so it is a real fear that when we get to higher levels, when we're looking at senior or staff level, that we still face people thinking that we're not technical enough. And we are actually starting to work with people who have perhaps gotten into their positions of leadership without having real technical skills, and they themselves are a little bit of impostering as well. So that can be difficult to navigate. I also wanted to add there is a path forward for women in some companies, well, men and women in some companies, as far as achieving a like distinguished engineer, a purely IC path. But even in that case, even if you are the one who likes to dive in and design architectures or like really do some security research and find out how to actually make that exploit work, your job is still strategy, even if you're not managing other people. So you do have to pick up and embrace those softer skills, the skills that like is actually the we get things done through other people and through getting consensus and even convincing people that this is in fact a priority. Like those are all things that we're going to need regardless.
Okay, so there's a lot of questions about how do you get an entry level role in cybersecurity today, which I think is a like I'll just put a plug out there. I actually wrote a post on LinkedIn recently that was like, hey, I'm trying to help these two candidates from diverse backgrounds find their first role in cybersecurity. A lot of people liked it. No one sent me any jobs. I've yet to find a lot of jobs, but then I did a similar post that was trying to help a friend who's a technical program manager, and I got a ton of people sending me jobs. He's much more senior, right? So, what do you guys think about like how do folks break into to security today? Even while we know there's like this huge like glut of open jobs, what are the entry level jobs today, and how does someone get them?
So around 18, 20 years back, I had the exact same problem. By training, by education, I was a software developer doing mobile game development, but nobody would hire me as a cybersecurity professional, even though I did all my internships and bachelor's project thesis in cybersecurity. It was very difficult. So I decided to attend Johns Hopkins University's Masters in Cybersecurity program. And that was a game changer for me. After that, everybody started associating me as a cybersecurity SME because literally 1.5 years I spent learning about 10 different domains. Fast forward 18 years, I don't think so anybody needs masters in cybersecurity. Now we live, breathe in different era. There are a lot of courses on Coursera, edX. There are a lot of certification if that excites you. There are a lot of conference where you can go network. The most important thing for entry level people is put yourself out there. Start talking about things that excite you in cybersecurity on LinkedIn, Twitter. Go do conference presentation. If you're not comfortable as a speaker, start volunteering, start meeting people, start getting not only mentor and coaches but those executive sponsors as well. So once you put yourself out there, plenty of opportunities will be presented to you.
I would
Go
like
ahead,
to share
Amanda.
my story on this one because even though I had some developer experience in PKI and cryptography, when I decided to make my switch into the InfoSec industry, I did it by going to a software company that during the interviews, I was actually interviewing for a kind of dev and test position. And there were no questions about security on any of them. And I have a friend and I had some friends in InfoSec. So I'm like, I think I would be worried about something like hacking at this point. That and then nobody's bringing that up. And when I finally got to the end where I was talking with the director, I'm like, "Hey, nobody has mentioned security in all of these things, and I know that you are moving this stuff to the cloud, and I'm sure you have security issues. What is your story around that?" And they're like, "Yeah, we don't really have one yet." I'm like, "Okay." I literally was saying this in my final interview. I'm like, "Why don't you hire me in this particular role? But I want to be your security person." And I don't actually have training on that, but guess what? I will find out what I need to know. If you can help me with that part of it, I will take this on. And so that was my pitch at the end. It was very spontaneous when I did this. And they said yes. They're like, okay, cool. That's great because we have nobody and we don't know what we're doing, as it turns out. And this was just before Heartbleed. So just to give a sense of what was going to happen as I was working with some things they were getting, partners were asking them to do security reviews and answer these assessments. And so I was trying to do them. I was learning Burp Suite because we were told to use Burp Suite. I'm like, what is this even? got the book on the Web Hackers Handbook, taught myself what is XSS, what is SQL injection. I'm doing all of this on the job. And that worked out. I got to the point of writing up what an incident response plan looks like literally the week before Heartbleed landed. So we got to test it out with a real thing. And that was great. So the point is, when you are entry level, if the roles don't exist, like this is going to sound like you can make them. So it's regardless of what your title is, if you are willing to take one particular role and one particular pay, but actually do different work, push that on the side, you can build it up that way. The thing that I couldn't do, even after 3 years-ish of doing this work for this company and saying we need to build a team, we need a technical program manager who can do this sort of thing, I started mentoring some of the other people who were in QA, other women who wanted to move into security. I was like, here are the resources I found. This is what we can do. I started a little journal club so that we could all learn together. I still couldn't get the company to call me a security engineer. That had to wait until I went to another company and presented myself like, here's my experience, never mind the title. This is what I did. This is what I want to do. And that works. So that's one way you can make your own entry level position. With smaller companies, they tend to be much more willing to do that. Bigger companies have their specific roles already, so it can be harder to get that flexibility.
And as
Yeah,
I have said before, if someone won't give you the title that you want, if you get the experience, then you can go get that title somewhere else, right? Like I think a lot of us have done that. We've said, oh, like I'll use myself as an example. I wanted to be a principal. And after waiting around for a long time for my company to do it, I said, well, this doesn't look like it's going to happen. So, and I don't think my manager's taking it too seriously. So I'll just get it somewhere else. So I think that's really good advice is like if you can do the work, even if it's the title is wrong, I know you can get the title somewhere else. Go ahead, Jess.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think the point about networking and building your community in the space is absolutely spot on. I think the other thing for me is just to apply for the job, like whether you meet the qualifications or not. As a hiring manager, I'm absolutely empowered to like down level a role if I find the right candidate, but they don't meet all the qualifications for the higher level position that I've posted for, right? So don't assume that just because the role is a senior role, if you show up and you've got the passion and you're willing to learn, that you're automatically disqualified, right? And so definitely apply for the roles that you want, and bring your best self, your whole self to the interview so that folks see exactly how passionate and excited you are about the role.
Tracie, why don't you go ahead?
I guess I'll be the dissenting opinion. It tends to be my role anyway. I would say that those are all great tips and those are all necessary things. But I will say for me, it's been the relationships that I've built in the community that have paid more dividends than 70 hours worth of books and conferences and trainings could do. When I started getting involved in B-Sides, when I started getting involved in running DefenCon when I ran that, there's something called the halo effect in psychology. And the idea is that people who see good traits in you will extrapolate other good traits in you. And so when people saw that I was capable of running a conference and capable of getting speakers and picking out what kind of chicken we were eating for lunch, somehow they extrapolated that out to I must be really good at other things. And I'm not sure that theory has totally panned out, but it opened a lot of doors for me to where when I was looking for jobs, I wasn't applying through job sites and stuff, and I did kind of a little like mock experiment. I knew I had a job waiting for me, and so I applied to a bunch of jobs here in the Metro Phoenix area just to see. Like I was like, I wonder if I would just get a call back, because I have this, I mean, I think I have a good resume. I've worked at some of the top manga companies. Is it manga now, Fang, whatever we used to be or are now. Like I've worked at some great companies. I have a depth of experience. Going to a small company should be a shoe-in. I got zero callbacks. 20 years in cybersecurity, certifications coming out my ears, speaking engagements. I mean, the whole, everything that people tell you, like, oh, you got to have this. I had all of those things. Zero callbacks. My connections, my network we're like, please come work for us. Well, we can make your salary work. We can make the remote work. We can do whatever. Like, we just want you. And so investing in yourself and your brand and investing in those relationships, I personally think is the greatest thing you can do throughout any point in your cybersecurity career. And Amanda, I know I talked a really long time, so now you go.
Okay, so I wanted to highlight one of the other things that I did. Once I was in cybersecurity, I started mentoring other people who wanted to switch in. So I did that at the startup, but I also did that at Amazon. So we had developers who wanted to move over to being security engineers or pen testers. How did they do that? And I basically mentored in. So that was them trying to build out their network, me expanding that and moving them over so they could essentially be willing to join in as entry level, but change that. Also, certifications matter in some industries and not in others. So I see some people asking about the CISSP. I have one. That was very useful for me to understand my current company, which is not big tech. And they are much more focused on, they're used to working with consultants who need the certifications because that's like your look. I actually have some proof it makes up for the personal networking that we've been talking about. So if you're looking for certification, be very careful about what target you're trying to get to. What is the industry you want to get into? And yes, build up that network, use your people. Like, we're the ones who get you there. Also, your LGBTQ networks and your women networks are really going to be helpful for you to make sure that you not only get that entry level position or whatever level position you're looking for, but also that you're avoiding some of the dangerous places that are perhaps secretly toxic. So rely on those, please.
Okay, so moving on, even though we could probably talk about this topic forever. Um, this one's sort of related to what we were just discussing, but it really focuses on transferable skills. So, what are sort of the transferable skills that you might get in a different area that would apply to cybersecurity? And I'll start by answering this for myself because I actually didn't start in cybersecurity. Like, it was a late transition for me. I've only been in cybersecurity for about 8 years. Like, I have the least amount of experience probably on this panel. And I'm, a principal security engineer, but I was working in identity and access management at the time when I made my switch. So I could really talk to things like, authentication and authorization and certificates, and to a point, crypto is still not my forte. But I was able to answer all these security engineering questions because these are things security engineers cared about. And I could explain it, given the background I had. So I guess when you guys look at your career, were there other transferable skills that you think really made that transition easy? I will say some of you were developers. You might want to talk to that a little.
Debugging. The ability to debug. I use it all the time. I use it myself when I'm trying to buy something on the web and somebody has like a brain dead bug on the client side. I'll use Burp, I'll use the developer tools. I will find their divide by zero and I will send a message to the company saying, hey, go find your developer and fix this bug, please. Also, I worked around it for myself. Sorry about that. Debugging is super useful and you'll use it if you're reversing. You'll use it when you're doing your pen testing. It will give you a leg up on those sorts of things. So if you have that skill, it's awesome. So be raw for devs turning into security engineers, but there are lots of other.
So as a cybersecurity professional, it is extremely important to have empathy and able to understand how each persona you're interacting with is coming from. Why the CISO requires information on metrics, why a developer is not able to fix certain things, or why a certain project manager is pushing us for a certain deadline. When I was a developer, I did not know the difference between a random number, a secure random number, and a cryptographically secure random number. Every now and then I put backdoors in my code so that I can have some easy shortcuts for testing and whatnot. So having that developer background really helped me when I switched to a security engineering role. uh, I could understand how developers think, and it was a completely transferable skill because I knew how developer thinks and why they do the things they do. It helped me to become a better security engineer. Like, I started providing them not only information on vulnerability, but actionable remediation guidance so that it's super easy for them to fix it. And end of the day, what are security vulnerabilities? They are software bugs. So why make big deal out of it? So that kind of empathy really helped me. So I totally believe no matter how you start your career as a system admin, project manager, developer, all those skills will help you once you begin your cybersecurity journey.
Yeah, go ahead. You were raising your
So
hand, right, Tracie?
yeah, so I have the exact opposite story again. I have no outside skill set. I've literally never done an adult job that was not cybersecurity. From the time I was 19, I think I've been in cybersecurity in some flavor or another. And so I guess it's the anti point to this is that there reached a point in my career where I switched over to security product. And to Trupti's point, I had never shipped a product. I had no idea how developers worked. I had no idea how software got made. All I knew is that developers were lazy and horrible and made my life terrible. And then I started to work with developers who are actually quite lovely, hardworking, intelligent people. Surprise, surprise. And it was that useful skill that I think got me to the next level in my career, because I see a lot of people in our industry that have never shipped a product, that have only maybe worked in GRC and compliance and consulting roles, that legitimately have no idea how the sausage gets made. And so they'll come in and, make these broad sweeping statements or these like fixes that can never be implemented. And so diversifying those skill sets or understanding that those are actually huge value adds in our industry, I think is really important.
So moderating is interesting when you have lots of things going on. How do you know when it's time, or how do you know when you're ready? Actually, it's probably a better way to word this. Take on a management role. Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I think the what did it for me was so I was a tech lead on an incident response team, and I just kind of floated, right? Like whenever there was a big problem to solve or a tricky technical thing or malware that somebody couldn't pick apart, like I just floated around to help people. And I realized one day that what I was getting the most enjoyment from was not the technical deep dive and solving the problem, but it was helping the person figure out for themselves how to solve that problem. And so that for me really like, turned on a light bulb that like I don't derive personal satisfaction from solving the technical problem anymore. That really for me it's unlocking that ability and removing barriers for other folks. And so that was when I made the move into a manager role. But there was a part of me, I think we talked about this earlier, that as a woman in tech, you feel like you always have to prove yourself technically. And so there was a part of myself that I really had to sit down and like make sure for my ego and for myself that I was okay with giving up that tech lead role and taking a manager role. And I think part of that too was recognizing that I'm being a people leader is a craft, right? That I'm not giving up a craft that I can excel in. I'm just choosing to do a different craft now.
Does anyone else want to take this? If not, I can answer the question since I've been a manager before. Okay, you're all just looking at me. So, you know, similar to Jess, it's like what excites you in the morning and what problems do you want to solve? When I first became a manager, for me, it was an interesting time. I was a technical program manager, so in a lot of ways I got to do the kind of work I wanted to do. But I thought this would be yet another growth opportunity. And I really confused, to be clear, management and mentoring at the time. And I was like, I love mentoring. Like, management would be so great. I just get to coach people and make sure they're super successful. And so, like, I fell into like a sort of a rut because I will be honest, I don't think management is mentoring now. So be careful what you wish for. But I think if you feel you're ready, like raise your hand, right? Like I got my first management job not because I applied, not because I was seeking it. I just said, I think I might want to do this. And my manager said, great, let me do it. Not sure she like thought in the end that was the best, way for me to have spent my time, but I learned a lot. Um, I flipped back to being an IC, and in case anyone's wondering, it's not a one-way door because I've been a manager now 3 times, and I'm back to being an IC. So you can do whatever you want. Go ahead, Amanda. You raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say again, so in most of my big tech companies, the manager was both in charge of making sure that you were getting paid, that you were meeting your performance requirements, and also manage your day to day, like what projects were you working on, like all of that fun stuff. In the current company I'm in, it's very different. There are activity managers and there are line managers, and so there's this separation about you have direct reports and you're responsible for their pay and do they have a laptop or not and do they get creds and are you proving their time off and all of that stuff. You are their HR and also their career mentor, as it were. And then you have the activity management, which is kind of more like a tech lead, but it's still like that aspect of management. So it depends on the company or the organization you're in, what a manager looks like and what the expectations are around that. So you also need to make sure that you are calibrating yourself according to where you are, and that will determine like what are the skills you need and like, ultimately whether you're going to enjoy the job.
Okay, so moving on, just sort of reading through all the comments, and a lot of people talk about working, we've talked about like related fields, but feeling stuck and unsure how to make a good pivot is really the gist of what I'm getting. So, Trupti, you and I have had conversations on this before. Would you be able to kick us off with that?
Yeah, I have felt stuck many, many times in my 18 years of cybersecurity career, and that became the trigger to go find a new job or the next opportunity that excites me. Um, some of the reasons why I felt stuck, mainly because of lack of growth. Like, very soon, within like a year and a half, the job would become monotonous. Like, you have mastered the job and you're ready for new challenges, but the organization doesn't have opportunity to, fulfill your growth goals. Few times I felt like the leadership is not very transparent. I mean, we all get it. They have to hold certain cards to themselves. But whenever there is, change of direction, and if they are not communicating transparently, it take all the work that we have been doing for last few months away. And this creates kind of, ambiguity in the work culture and sort of like insecurity if you start seeing layoffs and whatnot. In those situations also I felt unstuck, and I felt stuck. And it's very important for me to be, part of a vibrant growing teams and organization. So whenever I don't see that type of environment, I feel stuck. And then the right thing is to do is put yourself on autopilot whenever you feel stuck. Focus what's your next goal, what kind of environment excites you, what kind of people you want to be with you. Tell all your professional friends whom you trust and start, looking for another job or opportunity. And when you find one, just make a switch.
Anyone else have anything they want to add around how to get unstuck? Okay, we'll move on. Earlier, Amanda, you mentioned, like lean on your whisper network, and sort of in passing it in a question. And I guess I wanted to throw this question out there, like, are there um, sort of unique things that women in cybersecurity need to think about or address to be successful?
Okay, I'll bite. Like there are so many. Like that's the thing that we haven't really been talking about. There are so many things. I had a list of the things I wanted everybody to know when they're starting out in their careers. The things that I wish had happened, which I wish I had understood. One of them was when I first started out, I was offered a female mentor in addition to the normal mentor. I'm like, why do I need a female mentor? Hello, this is like modern day and age. This is all fine, right? I've been told everything is great now. We're all equal. We're not all equal. Like that's still the truth. And so having that female mentor to tell me, don't go to this organization. They're really crappy. I know they have great projects. I know you really want to do it, but they will eat you alive because you're a woman. And I believed her, but I didn't believe her. And I went to that organization anyway. And you know what happened? My team, all men, started to change their meetings so that I would miss them. They were literally moving them to times where I couldn't make it because they didn't really want me there. And then when it was time for me to be like, okay, I'm stuck. I'm not getting things done. I'm always getting asked if I'm the administrative assistant here. Like, what is going on? I was a developer at the time. Um, I I ended up like leaning on my network, leaning on my friends. I pivoted out of that because I was definitely stuck. And on my way out, I found out that they had decided that because I was about the age to get married, everybody knows that women get married and then they have kids and they quit the company. So you don't have to invest in them because they're going to leave anyway. So why waste the time? I was ultimately in my organization, 200 developers working on this particular part of Windows. I was one of two women. So that gives you an idea of just how small it was, like what was going on there. So rely on your female network, rely on your other group networks, whether it's race, ethnicity, whatever it is, so that you get those insights because those are actually really important and listen to them. So that's one thing that happens. There's a whole other thing about how we as women tend not to negotiate our pay, our resources. We've talked about being stuck because people aren't being transparent about what resources are available to people, and women just don't get them because they're perceived as not needing them as much or something like that. So being able to know what resources are available and negotiate for them is also something that women don't do enough, and we also need to do it differently than men do. There's a bunch of research, and I think somebody can drop a link into the chat about this, where there's a different way that women need to pitch what we are worth because we tend to get judged on what we have done, not what we are perceived to be able to do. So that's kind of like the key difference between men and women when it comes to negotiating. And I know I've been saying men and women. I also want to include non-binaries because that is also another thing that can be very difficult when it comes to negotiating and getting the resources you need, being how your team and how leadership perceives you. So that's it for me.
Go ahead, Tracie.
So funny, there's two things I want to call out. The first is sort of echoing Amanda's sentiment there. I had almost the exact conversation at the exact same company in a completely different part. I had just given a presentation on, at the time, I think there was 11% women in cybersecurity. And this guy came up to me, one of our senior managers, and I call it the nice guy effect. Like I would never have picked him out and been like, oh, he's an enemy of women. And he came up and he's like, oh, I really liked your presentation. I really wish there was more women pen testers, but I just don't think a lot of women want to work these hours. And I knew the answer. I knew the answer, but I wanted it to be a different answer. And I was like, tell me more. Have women turned you down because of the hours? He's like, well, I mean, no, but it's just that women, and it's like you saw him stop the words come out of his mouth, but he had already thought the thought. I said, because women have babies to take care of. And he looked so relieved. He goes, yes, exactly. Women just have families and stuff to take care of, so they don't want to work these kind of hours. And I was like, oh, no. I was like, you realize that at the time I had no children and I don't plan on having children. So you're penalizing me for a choice I may never make. And it was like that realization where he was just like, oh my gosh, like he had this deep-seated conviction that women can't work those hours because they have babies to take care of. And then the second one, just really quick, the idea that not everyone in your circle is in your corner. So I had a female mentor who gave me the opposite advice, actually. And she was like, you can't leave here. If you leave, they'll never hire another woman. And so be very careful that you don't become the minority in whatever minority that is that is taking the bullets on behalf of your team. Like, that is not your job to own. You can decide to do that if that's something that's important to you, but be very careful that that sort of double burden doesn't land on you. And I think Jess had something.
Yeah, I want to share an anecdote and then a call to action, which is like I spent when I first pivoted over to InfoSec, I had moved across country. I was a single mom. Like I was definitely in terms of my um, ability to just walk away from a job. Like I had zero safety net there. Um, and so I put up with a lot of crap, right? And the one time I tried to call my leadership on it, they were like, "Hey, we recognize that you're a single mom and your support system is here in town and there's no other jobs in this town, so like you're stuck, which means we don't have to give you a pay raise. We're going to give it to the single guy because he's got better career opportunities than you do, right?" And so when I finally got enough of a safety net and got enough positional authority and informal authority in that org, like I put my foot down. And it ripple effect caused a lot of change and improved the environment for every other woman who's come after that, like to have that safety net in work and have a more equitable and safe work environment. And so I guess my call to action to all of the leaders on the call, right, is to use your positional authority and the safety you have in your companies to not have to deal with any kind of repercussions or blowbacks, to be that advocate and not don't just warn women to not go to an org, but like actually go hold those leaders accountable and those teams accountable to change their culture.
The only thing I would add, and I think, we've discussed this as a team, is don't do unpaid work. Often you will be asked because you are, a diverse candidate to do, work in diversity, equity, inclusion. And if you're super passionate about that and you love that, like 100% do it because like you'll get your own sense of like gratitude for doing it. But you're never ever going to get promoted for it and you're never ever going to get paid for it. So do it because it's something you want to do, but don't expect that that will, necessarily benefit you in any way. Go ahead, Tracie.
This web interface is killing me. Sorry. And just to echo, don't feel like you have to do that because there is this burden on minorities, whether it's racial minority, gender minority. Um, why aren't you leading the women at whatever company group? Why aren't you leading the blacks at whatever group or African Americans at whatever group? Why aren't you doing that work? You're African American. You should want to do that work because look, that's you. And it's like some of us don't have the spoons, the water, or the interest, and that should be okay. What we should be saying is, hey, not that minority, you should be in those groups carrying some of that water. You should be in those groups pushing that agenda forward. Why aren't you being graded on how well you're supporting diversity across your organization by being in the ERG groups? Or does everyone call them ERGs, resource groups? Yeah, so just to call out that it's very much okay to say, I don't have any interest in doing that work. That is not why I'm here, and I don't have the extra spoons to carry that.
So there are also some companies have other ways of applauding peer work or the work of other people, and I use those methods to pay back people who are doing that work. So people who are arranging those workshops or trying to mentor others or are working in these ERGs. And then also make sure that I am just sending unsolicited notes to the manager saying, hey, this person is really illustrating this awesome leadership quality by this thing that they're doing. Did you know that it's having this impact over here? Just as I am giving some information that should be included in your promotion list, whether or not they're actually doing it yet. So that's one way to try to push that change a little bit. I don't know how effective that is overall, and that's my caveat on that.
Okay, we have 30 seconds. So really quickly, what are you, someone asked in Slido, like what books are you currently reading? So literally they just list the book, My book is Fancy Bear Goes Fishing.
I'm reading a book called The Mom's Test. It's to do customer discovery as a startup founder.
Financial feminist. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can help take care of others, and getting the money we deserve for the work that we are doing is a way to smash the patriarchy.
I'm reading How to Measure Everything in Cybersecurity Risk, because part of what I am doing now is making sure we can tell leadership about what we're doing in a way that's meaningful.
I'm reading Not with a Bug, but with a Sticker, because as we're all going AI first, we as security orgs have to be part and parcel of that conversation.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you so much to the attendees. I hope this conversation was helpful. You have our names. If you have further questions, I would encourage you to connect with us on LinkedIn. I won't promise everybody will accept. I will definitely accept. And we hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you all.